arms and legs today. Bit of an interesting combination, but when you think about why I'm doing it, it won't seem that weird. Let's go through the thought process here. I'm doing it because I know that when I do chest or back or shoulders, it's usually using up that many of my resources that I really can't give a good effort with my arm training. So I still do something usually, but it gets neglected. So I would rather have to just focus on maybe one movement on those days, or just getting a quick pump and then going, as opposed to having to do an extra 20 odd minutes of focused arm training. The other reason, why am I doing it on legs, and why am I doing it before the lower body work? It's being done because that's when I'm going to be at my freshest and I can give it its due diligence. For me, arms are something I'm trying to bring up, and when it comes to lagging body parts, you don't just want to give it more frequency, but you want to give it the appropriate intensity and focus that it deserves. With lagging body parts, it's so easy to just skip over it and fluff around and not give it that honest effort. So when you do it first and prioritize it, you're going to make better progress on it. Also, as hard as you really go on your arms, you can push super hard. You're really not going to fatigue yourself to the point that you can't perform properly for the rest of the session. Do it before torso work, your torso work is going to suffer. Do it before lower body work, it probably won't suffer that much. If anything, what I find is it neurologically wakes me up a little bit more, because it gives me the chance to get some extra circulating catecholamines or stress hormones just from that weight, stress, pump, stimulus. That wakes everything up. So when I go to do my leg work, I'm already warm. I don't do as many activation drills or warm-ups because my body, my brain is switched on. And it's just a matter of doing a couple of movement patterns to wake up my hips properly, and then it's go time. All right, so I've dabbed on my rosemary, I've eaten my chocolate. It's time to get into the gym and get a chocolate pump. Starting off with some isometric activations for the upper back, the external rotators specifically. So shoulder stability, scapular stability, these are things that contribute the most to overall shoulder health and subsequently elbow health, especially when you're training arms. So if you have instability at the shoulder joint or instability at the scapula, which is where the biceps and triceps do have attachments, if you have instability there via weakness in those surrounding tissues, that will tend to travel downstream to the elbows. Your body will try to seek to compensate and find stability down in the elbows or in the wrists, and that's where you can start to get a lot of tendonitis issues or just overuse injuries and wear and tear through the elbows and wrists. The shoulder and scapula were designed to be able to handle a lot of force and absorb a lot of tension. But if there is an imbalance, because typical muscles like the external rotators are lagging in terms of their recruitment and in terms of their strength, you can get a lot of issues. So all I'm doing here is pulling my arm back into external rotation and forwards into internal rotation. You've seen me doing this a lot in some of my older videos, and I'm just holding it for about 5 or 6 seconds, holding a general contraction of about 3 to 4 out of 10, and letting it gradually increase in intensity. And I'll find by the last times I'm going through it, I've got a very stable shoulder and things are feeling really good, and I'm ready to start doing some training. So once I went through my rounds of internal external rotation on either side, I went into some overhead raises just with the plates as you see here. I'm taking the shoulder through a more complete range of motion, going from the sides right up to overhead, focusing on elevating the shoulders at the top. So again, just trying to wake up and target those muscles of the upper and mid back that will then provide a lot of the stability in today's training. So starting off with close grip presses and pairing this with some basic standing barbell curls with a slight twist, which we'll get to in a sec. So if you have watched my older videos, specifically the heavy shoulders and arms, I did speak about close grip bench pressing, and back then, which was the last phase, I was doing dips as my main tricep exercise, which provided a lot more room for mobility and articulation of the scapula. Now that I've got that proper stability and strength through the serratus and the scapular muscles that articulate the scapula, now I'm at a point where I can start to use heavier loads and use a exercise like the bench press where my scapula are going to be fixed in place, which is something that long term isn't actually fantastic. Like the scapula are meant to be able to move and articulate around. If you're constantly jamming them down onto a bench press, that's going to be limiting the overall functionality. And again, that can contribute long term to shoulder issues and elbow issues. Now, just quickly, while the form is really tight here without any weight on, for the curls, you can see I'm doing a basic drag curl motion where I'm pulling the bar straight up my body, and then I'm pushing the elbows forwards and up, getting a slight degree of shoulder flexion as simultaneously I'm pulling my elbows in together. What this does is it accentuates the short head of the bicep by going through the extra degree of shoulder flexion. So I call that a compound curl. So today I'm just working up towards one heavy all-out set on both the bench pressing and the curls. So taking my time to warm up, and like I was saying at the start of the video, I've increased frequency and I've increased intensity. You're going to see these sets, they're going to be quite intense when I get to my work sets. But more importantly, I'm only doing one set per body part for biceps and for triceps. This is again all about efficiency and accumulating the right amount of intensity without completely damaging myself. Because I know that with this higher frequency training style, I'm going to be hitting the arms again more frequently through the week. So it's not conducive to always be digging them into the ground with so much volume. So I'm just going to go in, and this is my first work set here on close grip bench pressing. So the goal is to hit about 8 reps. I wasn't really sure. Again, this is my intro week to it. So I was shooting for 8 reps and I got 8 reps. And then this is followed by some rest pause work. So I would rack the weight, take about 10 deep breaths, go again, rack the weight, take another 10 deep breaths, and then go for one final set. So this incomplete rest in between the sets, in this one overarching rest pause set, it allows for a little bit of accumulation, a little bit of recovery, and then it allows you to get out that extra couple of reps to push that set further. So instead of me being stuck on an 8 rep max, I'm taking that 8 rep max and extending it out to maybe 10, 11, 12 reps by the end of it, which yields a lot more intensity, a lot more stress on the body, a lot more fatigue through the muscles, which is long-term going to yield a lot more growth. But of course, this is a very, very intense technique in terms of not just on the specific muscular system, but neurologically, it's very, very demanding. So it's something that I'm not wanting to do too many sets on. Again, it comes back to I'm just doing one set for triceps, just doing one set for biceps, because it's something where with lagging body parts specifically, if you hit them with too much volume, you're going to also get a negative response from it. I'm sure many of you have gone through those moments where you've done 5, 6, 7 different exercises, multiple sets per exercise for whatever body part it is, and you never really got much more out of it, no matter how far you pushed. Whereas if you just had 1 or 2 sets, a handful of reps, maybe 1 or 2 exercises to really put all your focus and attention into achieving what you want to achieve in terms of the stimulation and focusing on that, I guarantee you're going to get a much better response. And then you can take that extra energy that you would have spent on accumulating more extra exercises and sets, take that extra energy, take that extra time and devote it to recovering, or devote it to more regular, more frequent stimuli of training. So you come back and train twice a day, or come back and train arms again like I'm going to in just a couple of days' time from this workout. All right, and moving on to my work set for compound curls. So for these, I'm sticking between sets of about 3 to 5 as my main goal. So it's something that I've only started doing in maybe the last couple of years, and that is taking my direct bicep work down to the lower rep schemes. It's something that I've avoided in the past for no good reason at all. And it's something where since doing it, I've experienced a lot more growth in my arms, particularly the biceps. I guess it may just be for me that I haven't used it much in the past, so I've got that untapped potential. But through a lot of my work with my clients and other people I've worked with, that I've found that as long as technique is always going to be maintained, that's always the first priority. But I've found that once that's maintained, if you do take your bicep work and bring the reps down and push the weights right up, you can tap into a lot of growth potential and make a lot more size gains. And you're going to find and experience a very, very different sort of pump through the muscles. It won't be that painful, I guess, burning kind of sensation. Instead, it's a very, very deep aching pump through the biceps, which I would probably suspect is some of the high threshold motor units being activated through the sheer load that they would normally get exposed to. So anyway, doing the rest pause set, you're going to see me doing. I just took 10 deep breaths there, going into the second rest pause set. Now after this set, what I'm focusing on is doing some isometric work. Again, something that if you follow my stuff for a while, you know how much I love slow eccentrics and isometrics, both as a intensifying technique and as a technique to help with activation and recruitment of lagging body parts. But let's talk about it a little bit here. So with isometrics under load, what's happening is you're constantly flexing that muscle. While you're constantly contracting or flexing that muscle against weight, you are jamming any blood flow from being able to go into the bicep. Like some will get in, but it is going to be very, very limited by the fact that you are constantly contracting and shortening that muscle. So for that entire duration of the isometric, blood is trying to rush into the muscle. Your nervous system, your brain is putting out a message saying, this muscle is under stress, send more nutrients, send more blood, send whatever you can to the region to help it contract. However, it can't do that because you're holding it under constant tension. Now, the beauty is once you release that contraction, in terms of like you stop the eccentric or you stop the isometric, straight away what happens is you get this ridiculous flush of blood, this super compensatory flush of extra blood flow to the muscle, which feels fantastic. And just like that, that was it for arms. Again, one set bicep, one set tricep. I really can't overemphasize it in terms of the low volume approach that I'm taking here because the intensity has pushed up. If you look back over the other videos I was doing through the last phase, I was pushing hard, I was still training hard, but I wasn't taking sets beyond failure points. I wasn't taking them beyond that point of fatigue. When you start doing that, that is a very, very, very different stimulus on the nervous system, and it will create a lot more stress in terms of your ability to recover and your subsequent ability to grow. So moving on now to some leg work. I'm doing, again, just 2 exercises. I'm doing hack squats and lying leg curls as my 2 primary movements today. So working back and forth between the two, again, taking complete rest between the exercises to make sure that I can give that honest effort on the final sets that I'm going to be doing. So what's happening here, when I'm doing hack squats, I've chosen it as opposed to a free squat because I know that I'm going to be pushing to that point of fatigue. I'm not doing rest pause work here, but I am doing a back down set. And I know that for me, that while I'm still learning and not learning, but practicing and solidifying my technique with bracing and breathing, you'll see I'm doing a lot of nasal breathing here, that I don't want to add the complexity of a free weight squat. I want to have something where I'm supported, at least for this first workout, so I can focus on proper stability and breathing and just focus then on just pushing that set as hard as I can when it counts. So technique-wise, when I'm doing leg curls, I'm thinking about specifically pushing my hips down and squeezing my glutes. If you look very, very closely, you'll see my lower back doesn't arch at all. And if anything, you see my glutes flexing. You see a little bit of tension going through my glutes at the top of the range of motion specifically, just to avoid me from arching my back too much, hyperextending that lower back and lifting my hips off the bench, which a lot of people will end up doing. So it's something that it will limit how much you can use. It will make you a lot weaker. It takes a lot of momentum out of the exercise. But I can guarantee for you, it will make the exercise that much more productive and that much more targeted on your hamstrings. So you will see when I get to that, back onto the leg curls in a sec, pay attention to before I even start the set. You're going to see me flex my abs and contract my glutes and go into a slight degree of posterior pelvic tilt, where I tuck my bum under, and from there, everything stays as locked in as possible, and I go through my reps. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking, I don't think so much about trying to get that pad into my bum or kick my bum. I'm trying to think about shortening the hamstring. So if you think about your hamstrings on the back of your leg there, I think about it as a rope because they look like ropes. But I think about not curling my leg up in terms of my shin bone up. I think about that rope in the back of my leg pulling in sort of like a, imagine someone at the top of my, I guess at the bottom of my bum, pulling up that rope like a tug of war rope. That's what's going through my mind. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure if that's going to help you at all, but that's my mental cue when I'm doing leg curls of any sort. So I'm thinking about compressing that distance and pulling on that rope. I'm trying to shorten the distance between my knee and my hip. Obviously, it doesn't actually change distance at all, but it helps to take that external movement of curling the leg up and make it more internal, to start thinking about the rope of the hamstring, that coil coiling up and shortening, which is what makes the movement that much more effective. So you see here, as I fatigue, this is on the rest pause sets here, as I fatigue, my pelvis stays locked into one position. I'm not pushing it any further to get more range of motion. I'm keeping my pelvis locked down, my hips firmly pushed down into the bench. See the contraction there through the glutes, and I'm just going as high as I can while still keeping that same technique. So rest pause set on the hamstrings. I made sure I did that first. Now, next up, I went into my hack squats, and here I was going to do 2 sets. One set would be my heaviest set for 8 reps. Which was today was 100 pounds per side. Again, focusing on perfect technique, controlling the eccentrics, adding a slight pause at the bottom. I'm thinking about, as I'm doing this, keeping my midsection braced really tight. I'm doing nasal breathing to keep myself breathing deep into my midsection, into my belly. And in terms of like foot pressure and placement, I'm thinking about driving through the ball of my feet just ever so slightly. There is still weight on my heels, obviously, but I'm thinking about almost kicking and extending my leg when I'm at the bottom position, just to assist in the recruitment of the quads. So once I did my top set there, I didn't focus on taking that to a failure point at all. I wanted to get to a comfortable mechanical failure with more compound movements, especially for legs where it can become stressful. It's not something where you want to be doing a lot of rest pause work per se. I'm not saying that I won't, but for this introductory week into this phase, I would rather do the back down set that you see here instead of going through the extra intensity of having to do the rest pause work. So I worked up to my heavy 8, and then I've backed down by about 50% or so, and repping out for as many as I can handle. I was going for at least 20 reps. I think I got 20 or 25 reps from memory, and that was it. So again, leg work is 3 sets, 1 rest pause set for hamstrings, 1 heavy set for hack squats, and 1 back down set, 1 pump set for hack squats. And this is where I do just really try to focus on digging deep and pushing that set as hard as possible. So you can enjoy that for the rest of this set.
Pretty sure you did more than me still.
Okay, finishing up with some ab work, just a few quick things here I want you to pay attention to is the flat lower back. And notice how before the first rep, I sucked my abs in and compressed into a hollow body brace. And I'm maintaining that throughout the entire set. So I went through, I think it was 3 or 4 sets of about 8 reps, nothing too hard at all. I like these because it is opening up my back and decompressing the hips as well as training the abs. And final thing for the day is my downshifting. Spent 10 minutes here just going back and forth between each side, doing a quad stretch. So foot up on a bench, knee bent as much as I can, pushing my heel into my bum, squeezing my bum, pushing my knee down towards the ground, keeping my pelvis roughly aligned. Now what you see me doing here as well is I'm reaching up and I'm reaching over to the opposite side, and I'm looking over to the opposite side as well while I'm doing the stretch. What this does is it integrates the entire superficial front line, that fascial line that runs across the front of the body, that integrates all of those muscles together. It's not just about looking at a muscle in isolation like the quads, but looking at how does it tie into all the other body parts in your body. Because that's the way that your body works. It's not about one muscle that is separate from everything else. Everything is connected. So when you do your stretching, when you do your movements, when you do anything, when you pick exercises, understand that there is no pure isolation. Everything works together as a cohesive unit. So take it there when you're training. Take it there when you stretch and when you downshift. So I'm really focusing here on bringing my heart rate down, deep, slow inhalations and exhalations into my belly to calm everything down post-workout before I leave the gym. Okay, so successful session, arms and legs. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Big thing for me is I'm coming out of this session feeling really good. I'm feeling awake, I'm feeling pumped up and primed and alert. I don't feel overly drained or fatigued as much as I did push. It's about taking that efficient approach to training. You don't need to drive yourself into the ground all the time. You've got to push when it's time to push, but you've also got to know when enough is enough, and how to walk out of the gym with a little bit left in the tank to know that you're going to perform better next time. I wrote a little bit about this. I wrote an article about it a little while ago, which I'm going to link below in the description. So go check it out if you want to know more about this whole system, I guess, of pushing for performance as opposed to just running yourself into the ground. I would say that if you are leaving most of your sessions feeling absolutely wiped all the time, dragging your heels and saying, I could not have done anything else, then that's not always going to be a good thing. I do believe you do need to know how to push hard, but in the exact same breath, you have to respect the fact that your body has finite resources, and we are focused on giving the body the opportunity to remodel and recover appropriately between sessions. And if you do 30-40 work sets for a body part, I guarantee the intensity won't be that high across all 30-40 work sets, so you are wasting your time, but you are also going to dig yourself into a deep ditch of recovery, and you're going to risk getting injured, and you're going to risk into that point of neurological fatigue where you start getting brain dead, you start getting dips in your energy, and you start feeling pretty shitty. So take a read of the article and let me know what you guys think. I'll see you next time.